There is a promise our world made to itself, etched in the ashes of a terrible war. A promise whispered in the silent barracks of Auschwitz and declared from the halls of global power. It was a simple, solemn vow. Never again. Never again would the world stand by while a people were systematically dispossessed, dehumanized, and destroyed. And yet, as I watch the news, as I see the images from Gaza, that promise feels like a ghost, a hollow echo in a world that seems to have forgotten. We are told this story, the story of Palestine, is complicated, that it's an ancient religious war, a tangled knot of history too complex for us to ever unravel. But what if that isn't the truth? What if the story we've been sold is a lie, designed to keep us confused, to keep us silent? I used to believe it too, until I started digging past the headlines and into the documented, lived history. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. This is not about religion, it's not ancient, and it is not complicated. It's about land, it's about power, and it's about a people being systematically erased in plain sight. If you've ever felt like you don't know enough to speak up, this is for you. Let's walk through the truth they never taught us. For centuries, the land we now call Israel and Palestine was part of the Ottoman Empire. It was known, locally and globally, as Palestine. It was a diverse society of Muslims, Christians, and a small, long-established Jewish community living together. The overwhelming majority of the population was Palestinian Arab. This was not an empty desert. It was a home. Then, an idea born in Europe arrived on its shores: Zionism. It was a political movement created by European Jews facing a terrifying rise in anti-Semitism. After centuries of persecution, culminating in brutal pogroms and the infamous Dreyfus Affair in France, many felt that Europe would never be a safe home. The solution, they argued, was to create a Jewish state. The chosen location was Palestine, a land where Jews were, at the time, a tiny minority. Starting in the 1880s, waves of Jewish immigrants, mostly from Europe, began arriving. And here is the first critical truth that is often buried. They began to acquire land. We are told this land was purchased legally. And in a narrow sense, that's true. But it was not ethical. Zionist organizations, like the Jewish National Fund, backed by European money, didn't buy land from the farmers who worked it. They bought it from wealthy absentee landlords living in Beirut, Damascus, or Istanbul. These elites had gained legal title to vast tracts of land under a 19th century Ottoman law, a law that the local Palestinian farmers, the fellahin, had resisted. For generations, these farmers had lived on and cultivated this land. It was their ancestral home, their entire world. They were never consulted. When the land was sold from under them, they were simply evicted, thrown off the soil their families had tilled for centuries. Forced into poverty or pushed onto less fertile ground, this wasn't just a real estate transaction. It was displacement. And it sparked the first seeds of resistance. Not against Jews as people, but against a political project that was taking their homes, their livelihoods, and their future without their consent. Then came the Holocaust. The world watched in horror as 6 million Jews were murdered. The cry of never again was born from this unimaginable suffering. In the shadow of this genocide, the global mood shifted. In 1947, the newly formed United Nations proposed a partition plan. It would give 56% of Palestine to the Jewish minority, who now made up a third of the population, but owned less than 7% of the land. The Palestinian majority was offered the remaining, less fertile 44%. Zionist leaders accepted the deal. It was a strategic masterstroke, giving them international legitimacy. But for Palestinians, it was a devastating injustice. They rejected it not out of hatred, but because they were being asked to give away more than half of their country to a minority of recent immigrants. It was a violation of the very principle of self-determination the UN was founded to protect. In 1948, the State of Israel was declared. The war that followed is often painted as a story of a tiny new nation fighting for survival against overwhelming Arab armies. But the reality is different. The Zionist forces were better trained, better armed, and had powerful Western backing. And before a single neighboring Arab army crossed the border, a systematic campaign to cleanse the land of its Arab population was already underway. Over 750,000 Palestinians were forcibly expelled or fled in terror. More than 530 villages were wiped off the map, their homes demolished, their histories erased. This is what Palestinians call the Nakba, the catastrophe. And it was not an unfortunate side effect of war. It was the goal: to create a Jewish majority state on land that was overwhelmingly Palestinian Arab. The people had to be removed. The story doesn't end there. In 1967, Israel launched another war, conquering the rest of historic Palestine, the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem. This began the military occupation that continues to this day. For over half a century, millions of Palestinians have lived under military law. Israel has built hundreds of illegal settlements on their land, carving up the West Bank into disconnected islands. It demolishes Palestinian homes and schools. It arrests people, including children, without trial. It has created a two-tiered system, one set of laws for Jewish settlers and another, oppressive military law for Palestinians. This is not a fringe opinion. Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, even Israel's most respected human rights group, B'Tselem, have examined the evidence and called it what it is: apartheid. And I ask myself, how did we let this happen? How did the world, which promised never again, allow another people to be subjected to a system of dispossession and segregation year after year, decade after decade? The promise to protect the victims of one atrocity cannot become the justification for creating the victims of another. The pain of one people's history cannot be healed by inflicting a new trauma upon another. Never again must mean never again for anyone. This system of occupation and apartheid does not sustain itself. It is funded, armed, and politically protected by the most powerful nation on earth, the United States. Nearly $4 billion in military aid every year. The most advanced jets, bombs, and surveillance technology, all used to enforce the occupation. And a diplomatic shield at the UN, vetoing any resolution that would hold Israel accountable. Why? It's sold as a strategic alliance, a foothold in an oil-rich region. It's a profitable loop for the weapons industry where American arms are battle-tested on Palestinian bodies. And it's about political power. Lobbying groups like AIPAC funnel millions into U.S. campaigns, punishing any politician who dares to speak up for Palestinian rights. Criticizing the actions of the Israeli government is deliberately mislabeled as anti-Semitism, a tactic used not to fight hate but to silence truth. This is why the story had to be complicated. Because if we saw it clearly, we would be outraged. If we understood the history, we could not stay silent. This isn't about hating Jews or Muslims or Arabs. It is about standing against injustice. It is about recognizing that a people's right to safety and self-determination cannot be built on the oppression of another. Palestinians do not need our pity. They need our solidarity. They need our voices. They need our refusal to keep playing along with the lies. It starts with knowing the history and refusing to look away. If this opened your eyes, share it. Because the lie that this is too complicated is the most powerful weapon they have. And the truth is our only way forward.